Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. How are you doing today? I hope everybody had a great weekend. My weekend was okay. I was incredibly busy, just getting things prepped up for the holidays and work and just just the day-to-day bullshit that I have to deal with. So there you have it. That's my life. Willy effing Bragg. You got that right, Warren. You got that right. Willy effing Bragg. That's correct. So, and we have Earl in the house, and we have Miguel in the house, and I appreciate y'all being here. So, and as always, so anyway, as you know, last week, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was expired, shall we say, in cold blood, and the assailant was out on the loose, and I believe they caught him today. So before we get to what we're going to discuss, we'll discuss that, since that's kind of like breaking news. So let me go and start right here with that story. And this is from Yahoo News and Fox News. I had to find a story, so I'm sorry I'm exposing all the Fox News, but it's the first thing I could contrive up in here prior to the show, because I was not at my computer at all until just a few moments. This computer that I was not on until just moments before the show. So there you have it. United Healthcare CEO suspect arrested at Pennsylvania McDonald's. Oh, what a place to get arrested at. An Ivy League graduate was taken into custody at the Pennsylvania McDonald's in the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson after a witness recognized him from the image of the suspect distributed by police. A source with knowledge of the investigation told Fox News Digital. The man, 26-year-old software engineer Luigi Manigoni, and I'm sorry for butchering up the name, had a similar gun and silencer to the ones used in the Wednesday shooting on his person, per the source. He also carried 4 fake IDs. The New York Post reported one of them matched the name of the ID used on the suspected gunman to check into the Upper West Side hostel. A senior law enforcement official told the New York Times that Manigoni listed grievances against healthcare companies for putting profits above care in the handwritten document. And this is what the guy looks like right over here. And there he is. That's the assailant there. So I'm not going to go into the full story. I just wanted to go and let you know this is the person that they believe was the one that assassinated Brian Thompson in cold blood. So there you have it. So we will leave it at that. So how are you doing around the world with D and friends? And how are you doing? How are you doing today, MC? Okay. How are you doing there? So anyway, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and discuss 2 people with a culture war, so to speak, perspective clash over the whole thing regarding Brian Thompson's death. And what I mean by that is that we're going to discuss Ben Shapiro, and then we're going to discuss Glenn Greenwald. Now, the discussion is not whether one should take delight in the expiration of Brian Thompson, because as much as I hate insurance companies, and as much as, and you hear me go off about private insurance companies all the time, I don't think they need to exist. But here's the thing about it. While they don't need to exist, I do not believe in violence against another human being. I mean, I'm opposed to capital punishment, for Christ's sake. I am opposed to capital punishment under all circumstances. So, and that includes people that commit the most heinous of crimes out there, which I would definitely include insurance companies people to be criminals of the highest or lowest order. So, so that being said, now, do I favor jail time for insurance people? There's enough of a tanky in me that I would prosecute these motherfuckers and put them behind bars if I had the power to do it. But I would not go and resort to what the particular way the assailant arrested did last week. But yeah, I think he should be arrested. I mean, I think that people, insurance companies, should be arrested, put behind bars, and I think that a benevolent government would take away the right to profit from the private medical industrial complex and just take it away from them. I would just have no problem with the government just snatching the profit motive away from these people. I have no problem whatsoever. In fact, I would cheer the people suffering that runs these insurance companies for the suffering that they have incurred on others. So I'm not afraid to say that at all. So there we have it. Ben Shapiro decides to go full culture war on this shit, and he basically, it's entitled "The Evil Revolutionary Left Cheers quote unquote murder." And you can imagine Ben Shapiro will give you a very Ben Shapiro take on this. Now I'm kind of pressed for time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the speed on 1.25, which he naturally speaks fast as it is, but if he sounds like a chipmunk, 100 miles an hour, speaking at 100 miles an hour, I'll slow it down. So here we go.
Well, folks, we have updates in the search for the murderer of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, who was, of course, on Wednesday. And there's some pretty deep ramifications for American society and all this. We'll get to that in a moment. First, time is running out. Daily Wire Plus is 50% off, but not for much longer. Get a full year of uncensored shows, exclusive series, documentaries, and more. Allowed to seek other care. Well, now she is full scale. So Taylor Lorenz, we talked about her yesterday. She is a psychotic former reporter for the Washington Post and the New York Times. She's totally insane. She was insane on COVID. She was insane when it came to the supposed predations of people on the right who ought to, she said, be shut out of media and particularly social media.
Yeah, Ben, and you believe that people on campuses should have their livelihood ruined because they hurt Israel's feelings. Fuck you.
Well, now she is full-scale rallying in favor of the murderer. So she tweeted yesterday on Blue Sky, which is a weird left-wing echo chamber form of Twitter.
You're weird.
There was a post put out by Blue Cross Blue Shield all about whether it was going to pay for anesthesia under its healthcare coverage. And she then tweeted out, quote, "And people wonder why we want these executives dead." So openly cheering the death of Brian Thompson. That wasn't her only post. Somebody put out a statement saying, quote, "Legislation idea. Healthcare executives and their families must be on the cheapest plan their company offers, and they aren't allowed to seek other care." And she wrote in all capital letters, "Endorse." Then she put out a post that showed a graphic of a happy star, like a star with a happy face and balloons, and the caption "CEO down." And she wrote, "Woke up to see this spammed in my group chats." And she said, "I am not alone," that other people were doing the same thing. Then she reposted a post from left-wing agitator Ken Klippenstein saying, "Today we remember the legacy of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson." And what exactly was that legacy? The claim denial rates by insurance companies. And of course, it's not just Taylor Lorenz. Socialist Nathan Robinson, a complete useless leech on the ass of society.
No, well, he's kind of a shitlib, but I wouldn't call him a useless leech on society. However, you are, Ben.
Posted himself, quote, "Live your life in such a way that people will be sad when you die." That was above a screen cap of a New York Times headline that said, "Torrent of hate for health insurance industry follows CEO's killing." That piece from the New York Times is all about people who apparently were perfectly fine with the murder of Brian Thompson on the streets of New York City. According to the New York Times, none of this stopped social media commentators from leaping to conclusions and showing a blatant lack of sympathy over the death of a man who was a husband and father of 2 children. Thoughts and deductibles to the family, read one comment underneath a video of the shooting posted online by CNN. Unfortunately, my condolences are out of network. A TikTok user wrote, quote, I'm an ER nurse, and the things I've seen dying patients get denied for by insurance, it makes me physically sick. I just can't feel sympathy for him because of all those patients and their families. And these sorts of messages were incredibly common.
Okay, Ben, would it make you feel better if somebody from the left expressed some kind of condolences or sympathy for Brian Thompson's demise? Okay, here we go. And this is going to be the closest thing you're going to get from me for this. On one hand, on a human level, I guess I'm sorry that he died. You want some emotion? Okay. Okay, you're satisfied now? Okay, fuck you. Let's go on.
Across the internet, we discussed yesterday a Columbia professor who wrote something very similar. Unfortunately, bubbling under the surface of all this is something very serious, really serious. What is that serious thing? The revolutionary left is creeping into the mainstream. Yesterday, we talked about liberals versus the left. Liberals are people.
There's no revolutionary left in this country. And liberalism isn't even on the left.
Who disagree with me on public policy, but aren't in favor of, the murder of their opponents. The left is a different thing. The shooting of Thompson has unleashed a wave of evil from members of the left. Thompson was not a criminal. He wasn't.
Yes, he was. And so are all the insurance companies in this country. They're all criminals. Just because it's not against the law to profit off the death of others through the insurance companies, that does not make them benevolent and moral. They're fucking criminals. I wish I could find a way to criminalize what they've done, to make it retroactive, to put them in prison for what they have done, because that's what I favor, Ben. I want you to know that.
Isn't even an advocate of death the way, for example, abortion or euthanasia advocates are. And by the way, murdering an abortionist or an advocate of euthanasia would be unjustifiable morally in a democratic system. Brian Thompson's great sin, according to these people, is that he was the head of a company that exists within a mixed private-public healthcare framework, and that he did his job, because that's how.
Yeah, denying health care to people who pay their ass off in insurance companies. You see, Ben Shapiro, this is how insurance companies run. This is their model. They take money from their clients, and once their clients really needs coverage, they will find any reason they can to deny it. And if they can get away with not covering anybody under any circumstances, that is what they want to do. That's what they do. This is what they do, Ben. How the hell can any conservative in this country, and I don't want to make it about blue versus red, but because at least in other countries, conservatives do support universal health care. Even the country that you suck the cock of, Israel, as bad as they treat the Palestinians in Gaza, they provide medical care for every citizen in Israel, including the Arab population that lives there. But you, Ben Shapiro, don't want to have that system here. So fuck you.
Health insurance actually works. Some things are covered and some things are not. You may not like the application of the coverage and it may be bad. That is not an excuse for murder. But for the left, if you hate the system, you are morally justified in murdering anyone who acts within the system. That means that if, like one Bernie Sanders follower did, you believe that private healthcare kills Americans, you can go around murdering Congress people. I know we.
Yeah, Ben, here's the thing. A lot of right-wing people have committed massive acts of violence. Now, that one guy that was unhinged, that shot several members of Congress several years ago, that happens to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, was just one person. You look at Timothy McVeigh, whose rhetoric was very anti-government, and who have, Timothy McVeigh hated, you got a yarmulke on top of your head, Ben. He hated people like yourself. He was influenced by the Turner Diaries. So as far as he's concerned, he looks at you the way he looked at you, the same way he would look at an LGBTQ person, an African-American, a Latino, or somebody for the federal government. So, but, facts don't care about your feelings in your case.
buried that one. Media pretended it never happened. Steve Scalise is still limping today because he was nearly shot to death by a Bernie Sanders fan who believed that being part of the quote-unquote system that didn't nationalize healthcare meant you were a murderer. This stuff means that if you don't like that health insurers often deny coverage for certain pre-existing conditions or non-covered doctors or medication, you can then murder the CEO of a health insurance company. This is revolutionary leftist evil. And it's evil for a couple of reasons. First, violence is not justified in a democracy where your say is part of the process. This is why democracies are generally good, because they outsource the violence to the government. Revolution to overthrow tyranny is justified, but tyranny has to be actually real, and violence has to be the last resort. I didn't like public policy in California, so I picked up my family and my company, and we left.
You left California because people were making fun of you for living in California, and there was nothing happening to you in California. You were fine in California, but you have a culture war, partisan narrative that you had to go and fulfill. So I believe your stupid daily wire operation moved to Tennessee and everything. I saw you in that pickup truck in the background with a cowboy hat on. You look really retarded.
Okay, tyranny is not real in the case of healthcare in the United States, and violence is not being used as the last resort in this particular case. If you perceive America to be a tyranny and violence to be the proper response, that is a call for unending violence until the system itself is changed. It's a call for revolution. When you say it's okay to murder CEOs on the street, that is a call for revolution. Second, violence against members of private industry, that isn't even a protest of public policy. Let's be fair about this. That isn't even shooting politicians, which would be evil enough. It's even a different level of evil because it's a protest against the very system of free markets themselves. Brian Thompson isn't responsible for America's healthcare system any more than the head of CVS is responsible for America's trade system.
There's a big difference. And again, I don't justify the expiration of the life of Brian Thompson. But you know what, Ben? You justify the expiration of the life of many, many people. You cheered the death of 1 million people dying unnecessarily in Iraq. You still defend that shit to this day. Fuck you to hell, you piece of shit.
Directing hatred against Brian Thompson is not about shaping public policy, because you could shoot every CEO in America and wouldn't shape public policy. It turns out that it's about trying to threaten anyone who engages in free markets at all. This is simply Marxist, leftist, radical evil.
No. Normal societies don't do what they do here when it comes to healthcare. And you defend the abnormal, Ben. You defend the abnormal. It's your job. I understand this is how you make your money. You defend the evil. You defend the powerful, and you defend the forces of reaction. And no, I do not justify violence against anybody under any circumstances. But there are many instances that you do. You may convey yourself in a more thoughtful manner than, let's say, someone like Mark Levin, who's way more unhinged in his delivery than you, or Michael Savage, or, well, I won't count Alex Jones. Alex Jones is actually funny. He's funny, and I don't agree with him, but he's funny. I don't ever get offended by Alex Jones. But people take you seriously. And so in your case, you're problematic. You're problematic. You got a free speech right to shove that pile of shit out of your mouth into the computer airwaves on the internet. But you know what? I also have a right to shed light and truth on your bullshit too.
This person could just as easily have shot a doctor who decided not to perform a surgery, or shot a bank CEO who denied a loan application for a home. It would have fallen under the same category. This, by the way, is not uncommon, unfortunately, in modern Western history. This was all the philosophy of the Red Army faction in Germany in the 1970s. That was known as the Baader-Meinhof gang. They weren't seeking a better world. They were seeking to tear down the world of capitalism on behalf of Marxist revolutionary evil. These are people who routinely quoted Herbert Marcuse and Antonio Gramsci. They called for revolution. Ulrike Meinhof, a left-wing radical journalist, led the way. She famously said, quote, "Protest is when I say this does not please me. Resistance is when I ensure what does not please me occurs no more." And that language is replete with echoes in today's society, from college campuses to left-wing media.
Oh, the college campuses again. You're talking about the anorexic 19-year-old pink hair college kids. Ben, it's not 2016 anymore. Life has moved since the year 2016. Stop living in the past.
That philosophy led the Baader-Meinhof gang to engage in routine assassination of everyone, from industrialists like Hans Martin Schleyer to Dresdner bankhead Jürgen Ponto to American soldiers in Germany.
about the Red Army faction or what have you. And that was in the German Federal Republic, West Germany. And the very people that you're denouncing as evil left-wing Marxists would like to see this country more like what the German Federal Republic was all these years, more than the German Democratic Republic. I'm talking about people who are the people you despise. They want to see Germany, the social democracy. But to you, you think that West Germany during the Cold War was the same as East Germany, and was the same as Maoist China, and the same as the killing fields of Cambodia, because you're a hack and you see no differences between various forms of left-wing government, whether it's a quote-unquote communist government or a social democratic government or whatever kind of government. You want to blind the American, the differences, but you want to blind the American people to be like, well, there's just obviously no difference. There's no difference between socialist Sweden, and there's no difference between socialist North Korea, and there's no difference between socialist Venezuela, when there's kind of like caveats of differences between all of them. That they all have a different type of traditions, a different type of governments, or what have you. For example, the government sector of Sweden is actually larger than the government sector of Venezuela, and Venezuela got free markets. I know that people like you get triggered by that, Ben, but that is the truth. And North Korea does not have universal health care. How about that, Ben? How does that make you feel with facts? How does facts make you feel? I know it hurts your feelings.
These people also sometimes become the tools of enemy regimes. Baader-Meinhof certainly was. They worked with the Stasi, the East German Stasi, other Soviet agents to foment chaos. They coordinated with terrorist groups like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Palestine Liberation Organization itself. The origins of Baader-Meinhof came from the 1968 student protests in Germany. Does any of this sound familiar?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up about Palestine, because you know why you got a Hamas problem today in Israel? You know why you got a Hamas problem today? That's because the Israeli government, the Mossad, funded the Muslim Brotherhood over there in the area of Gaza, and they groomed Hamas into a force that undermined the political influence of the PLO. So the PLO eventually became a shell of its former self, kind of what the United States did by supporting rebels in Afghanistan against the Soviets. And you saw the blowback, what happened on 9/11 against the United States. Israel had their blowback. And of course, they knew what's going to happen too, but that's beside the point. So anyway, I don't want to go into that. I want to go into this whole thing about healthcare.
They were Marxist in orientation. They were actually influenced by the 1965 Watts riots in the United States, radical race riots in the United States, in which violence was somehow justified. They allied with radicals all over the globe. They would read Che Guevara. They wrote essays defending the Munich massacre of Israeli Olympians by Palestinian terrorists. Stephen Ost is an author who literally wrote the book on the Baader-Meinhof gang. And he pointed out, quote, the Baader-Meinhof gang drew a measure of support that violent leftists in the United States, like the Weather Underground, never enjoyed. A poll at the time showed a quarter of West Germans under 40 felt sympathy for the gang. 1/10 said they would hide a gang member from the police. Prominent intellectuals spoke up for the gang's righteousness, as Germany, even into the 1970s, was still a guilt-ridden society. When the gang started robbing banks, newscasts compared its members to Bonnie and Clyde. Andreas Baader, a charismatic action man indulged in the imagery, told people his favorite movies were Bonnie and Clyde, which had recently come out, and The Battle of Algiers, which is an anti...
Yeah, and you were talking about poor old Steve Scalise limping around earlier as if he's a victim. Now, I don't support any harm being done, and not even against Steve Scalise, but Steve Scalise once bragged that he was David Duke without the baggage. Now, have that resonate in your little tiny mind, Ben. Have that resonate in your tiny little mind right there. I am David Duke without the baggage. That's what Steve Scalise said. Just let that permeate through your mind a little bit.
Anti-colonial propaganda piece on behalf of actual groups that would end up with an Islamic fascist regime in Algeria. The pop poster of Che Guevara hung on his wall. He paid a designer to make a Red Army faction logo, a drawing of a machine gun against a red star.
I have a Che Guevara t-shirt. I have a Che Guevara poster. That is sometime on my bedroom wall. Sometimes it's not. It just Just depends. What about it, man? What about it? Look at all the pieces of shit that the United States has supported over the years in the global South, down in Latin America. They have supported many right-wing movements, and Che Guevara was a force for good. Your homeboy Augusto Pinochet was not. Bolsonaro down in Brazil was not. In recent years. So, fuck you.
So, with all this backdrop, what exactly are we supposed to make of journalists, pseudo-journalists like Taylor Lorenz, or academics like the Columbia professor who proclaim soft support for the murder of Brian Thompson? Well, I mean, I think that we should take it as a leading, bleeding edge indicator that we are on the verge of something terrible.
What you advocate is much worse. You advocated the murder of 1 million people in Iraq. You advocate turning Gaza into a parking lot. You advocate these things. Domestically, during the Bush-Cheney years, you advocated domestic spying against all Americans. You also, in recent, like last year, you cheered the crackdown against students on campus, saying that you're glad that they're going to be suspended and arrested, and and probably denied their chances of having decent jobs. You cheer this shit, and you going to go and lecture people about free speech and cancel culture and all this stuff. You are the biggest hypocrite piece of shit alive today. And why people pay any attention to you is a mystery. I am sick of you. You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. So enough with Ben Shapiro. Enough of him. So anyway, that was Ben Shapiro right there. I had to get that out of my chest. And here's the thing. He's talking about people, he's talking about violence and all that. What about the violence of private health insurance companies? He's not concerned about the violence of private health insurance companies. But anyhow. So anyway, let's go ahead and play some Glenn Greenwald. Because Glenn Greenwald is going to share you his take on this as well. So we'll put it on high speed, hold on a second. Let me get it speed 1.25. Here we go.
The CEO of one of the planet's largest health insurance giants was murdered in cold blood on the streets of Manhattan very early this morning when he was preparing to attend a long-scheduled conference of investors and other associates of his company. And it was clear that the assassin knew exactly who he was, waited for many people to pass by until his target, the CEO of this company, appeared, and then he then gunned him down in cold blood. Here from AP News earlier today from the Associated Press, you see the headline, United Healthcare CEO is fatally shot in a, quote, targeted attack outside of a New York hotel, officials say. Brian Thompson, 50, was shot around 6:45 a.m. as he walked alone to the New York Hilton Midtown from a nearby hotel, police said. The shooter appeared to be, quote, lying in wait for several minutes before approaching Thompson from behind and opening fire, New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said. Police have not yet established a motive. Quote, many people pass the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target, Tisch said, adding that the shooting, quote, does not appear to be a random act of violence. Surveillance video reviewed by investigators shows the shooter emerging from behind a parked car, stopping and pointing a gun at Thompson's back, holding it with two hands and firing multiple times from several feet away. The suspect continues firing, interrupted by a brief gun jam as Thompson stumbles forward and falls to the sidewalk. Quote, from watching the video, it does seem that he's proficient in the use of firearms, as he was able to pretty clearly clear the malfunctions pretty quickly, New York Police Department Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenney said. NBC News found this tidbit that seems to be revealing, the title of which is Brian Thompson's wife said that threats had been made against United Healthcare CEO before the shooting. Thompson's wife, Paulette Thompson, told NBC News that the executive told her, quote, there were some people that had been threatening him. She said she didn't have details, but suggested that those threats may have been involved with issues with insurance coverage, meaning presumably that people who thought that they had health insurance coverage and were paying premiums to this health insurance giant ended up being denied coverage in a way they thought was unfair. Oftentimes that can make people face the prospect of financial ruination. It can add to a great deal of stress at a time when they or their family are facing some sort of serious illness, and it generates a lot of anger, which is why this industry in particular is one of the most hated in the United States. For those of you interested in watching a surveillance video that actually shows the shooting, it shows it pretty vividly. So if you don't like to see this kind of graphic violence, you should look away. It's just about 22 seconds long, but their video makes quite clear, very, very clear, that this is not a robbery, it's not a botched assault. It's an extremely directed, intentional assassination of a person for whom the killer was waiting. And here you see on the video exactly what those news outlets were describing. So there you see the shooter in a very calm, quite intentional way. I would almost describe it as professional, pulling out a gun that is aimed directly at the person whom he's seeking to kill. He puts no other civilians or anyone else in risk. He walks right up to him, continues to shoot him until he's on the ground, until he's dead. And that is why there seems to be little doubt that this was a targeted assassination. And then you see the shooter leaving on foot. I lived in Manhattan. I know exactly where this Hilton is. It's basically in the middle of Midtown. It's a gigantic hotel right on, if I recall correctly, 50th and 51st Street and 7th Avenue. I actually lived quite closely to it. So it is a shooting, I wouldn't say in broad daylight, since it seems to be about 6:30 a.m., although certainly the streets of Manhattan are starting to be full at that time. And the fact that the executive was there for a scheduled and publicly announced conference that is held each year for United Health Group gave added weight to the obvious theory that this person was looking to murder the CEO of United Healthcare Group. And even though the motive is unknown, the actual act and the intentionality of the shooter seems to be extremely clear. Now, it's very difficult sometimes to talk about the reaction of, quote, the so-called internet, because the internet is so gigantic that you can always find pretty much anything that you look hard enough to find. Anytime anybody is killed, you can find expressions of celebration or happiness or people being deliberately cruel, especially while hiding behind the anonymity. It doesn't really say much about anything, given that the internet is large enough that, as I said, you can find every kind of reaction to pretty much every event. But in this case, it wasn't just a kind of handpicked, selective, stray group of commentators who were reacting in a certain way. It was a very significant, immediate, and visceral reaction that wasn't really so much about celebrating the death of this person who really very few people outside of this industry had even heard of. It wasn't really any sense that some sort of blow for justice had been struck. No one thinks that the healthcare industry, no matter how much you hate it, is going to be destabilized in any way. Obviously, there's going to be some other executive immediately replacing the CEO. It's not going to have any real effect on the industry itself. But what was so striking about it is that, I generally believe that most people are psychologically healthy, which means that when they see somebody being shot down, gunned down with no provocation, their immediate instinct is to feel some degree of empathy and sadness for that person. And it turns out he's married, he has children, he's therefore a father and a spouse and a parent and a son to his parents, both of whom I believe are still alive as well. So there's obviously human tragic element to this, in the sense that there are people who are going to be grieving, who know this person, who are colleagues of him, etc. But for most people who don't think of him as a person about whom they're grieving, he became a symbol of the health insurance industry that polls have long shown people have a great deal of visceral hatred for. And it immediately became apparent based on the reaction, as I said, not of stray comments, but of a large scale sector of internet sentiment, not on the right or the left, but across the political spectrum, that was really quite sardonic in its critique of the healthcare industry. Here is the Facebook page of United Health Group, the company that he led, and here's their announcement, quote, "We are deeply saddened and shocked at the passing of our dear friend and colleague, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare." Brian was a highly respected colleague and friend to all who work with him. We are working closely with the NYPD, and we ask for your patience and understanding. During this difficult time, our hearts go out to Brian's family and all who are close to him. So a very sort of standard corporate statement that expresses all the right sentiments. And yet you had a great deal of reaction underneath the Facebook page, and I forgive all of you, because it's certainly true for myself, if you've forgotten that Facebook exists, let alone how it works. But typically after a Facebook posting, When people comment, there's different emojis they can use to express particular emotions in response to those comments. Facebook tallies a running tally of how many different people are choosing each particular emoji. And here you see there were 8,400 responses to this official announcement from this company, a very, as I said, kind of standard announcement, absolutely nothing offensive or provocative about it. And of those 8,400, the vast majority, 5,500, chose this emoji that's basically a laughing emoji. People just kind of expressing some sort of glee or happiness about the fact that this person was gunned down. And again, I don't think this was focused on the individual himself. No one knew who he was, really. No one felt any particular animosity toward him.
Ben Shapiro probably thinks that they were all a bunch of Bernie bros, but anyway.
The animosity is being directed toward the health insurance industry itself for reasons that I think are really worth exploring. There's about 1,000 people who used a tearful emoji, another 1,000 people who used some sort of strange one, and then some people who gave a thumbs up. But clearly the overwhelming response, both here and everywhere I saw on the internet, was this sort of expression of some kind of sense of justice that had been achieved.
And that's the thing right there. People hate private health insurance companies. And I don't understand why there's not, I don't understand why there's not a push to get rid of it by the supposed progressive oppositions. There's a lot of propaganda that's been used. And it used to be a time when somebody would say, oh, this candidate running for office, he wants to get rid of your private health insurance. As if, oh my God, that's just the most evil thing you can do. And the biggest evil that's done is what private health insurance do or don't do for people, like not covering people when they're in need. And if these people, these clients, they don't die, they're usually bankrupt or financially ruined. And it's just part of the cogs of the systems. You compare this to what's done in other countries where they provide one form or another of universal health care. Like in Canada, they do a national health insurance system. It is the Medicare system that is for all people in Canada. It's the socialized system called the National Health Service in the UK. It operates exactly the same way in Cuba. You have a hybrid system like they have in Germany. I think Germany used to have national health insurance, but they decided to go with a public-private system to coincide with each other. I don't know why. I had a manager who was half German, half French, and I asked him talked about the German system. And he described it, and I said, well, it sounds like basically a more public, more generous version of Obamacare, but more efficient. And he said, yep, that's what it is. So, and the thing about it is, the point I'm trying to make is these countries, they look at us and they think we're nuts for having the system that we have. And I tell people in these countries with their public systems, even those who complain about it, and you're not going to find anything perfect. You're not going to find a system that's perfect. But I can't look at the American system and be like, well, by golly, because there might be a slight waiting line in the UK or in Canada or in Sweden that we have to go and stick with this rotten system because the problems that they have in those countries is minuscule compared to what we have here. And besides, the one universal healthcare system in one country, they're not all, some of them are going to be better than others. Like, for example, the World Health Organization rated France as having the best system in the world, followed by Italy and another country it's like a little tiny country in the eastern part of Italy called on the coast of the Adriatic Sea called San Marino. These three countries have the best healthcare systems in the world, or did by the World Health Organization back in 2000. I don't know what it is now, but I remember reading that and I'm thinking to myself, this is what we need here. We need to follow what they're doing. And I remember the conspiracy theories from Free Republic. I was reading Free Republic. Just go online if you don't know what Free Republic is. It's a conspiracy-based ultra right-wing discussion board. And these people just these people predate the dark side of MAGA that exists today. The most right-wing obnoxious people you find in MAGA, these people, were it in the 1990s, back then, when some of us, including myself, was defending Bill Clinton, not because we like Bill Clinton, but because the right wing were so insidious. When Hillary Clinton talked about the vast right wing conspiracy, some of us cheered her on. Now looking back, I'm thinking maybe the right wing should have defeated the Clintons, because we probably would have never had a George W. Bush. Would have probably never had a Donald Trump. Would have probably never had, we probably wouldn't have the problems we have now. So maybe we should have just taken our medicine then, what have you. I don't know. I'm not going to go and dwell too much on that. But I remember that Free Republic basically made a conspiracy theory that Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the first female prime minister of Norway, was the director general of the World Health Organization, and she was the Hillary Clinton of the UN, trying to make sure that every nation in the world has socialized medicine. And one, you insulted Gro Harlem Brundtland by comparing her to Hillary Clinton. And two, if she was trying to make sure that every country in the world has socialized medicine, you just made me like Gro Harlem Brundtland even more. So there you have it. But suffice to say, I'm going off on a tangent here, but the thing is, we don't need private health insurance companies, and we need to get rid of it. We need to use the Defense Production Act of 1950, take over pharma, and use it for the public good. That's my position. So we'll let Glenn Greenwald continue.
Given how much suffering and cruelty this industry represents to so many people. Now, just to give you a sense of the kind of reaction beyond just the emojis when people are actually being able to express themselves. As I said, it wasn't the kind of celebration of death or killing that you often see if some particularly hated figure is murdered or if they died and people celebrated. That really wasn't the ethos. It was more, as I said, a kind of very pervasive and strongly felt anger toward the industry itself. So here were just a couple of representative comments that appeared on TikTok of the sorts of things that I saw over and over, and sort of people with whom I work and other people who observed this as well. Here was one person who said, quote, "I'm sorry, prior authorization is required for thoughts and prayers," meaning.
Hold on a second. I was seeing here. Hold on a second. In the Lost Fairyland, Penny is a murderer and Luigi is a hero. They live in an upside down moral universe where good is bad and down is up. I'm a leftist, believe me, rocking horse winner. I am a leftist, and I, not for 1 minute, have endorsed the expiration of Brian Thompson. So you can go and say Lost Fairyland all you want. This is a free speech forum here. We allow free speech in this forum. We're free speech absolutists. We don't cancel like Ben Shapiro likes to cancel. But here's the thing. Luigi Managoni, you could say he murdered one man. Brian Thompson murdered many, many, many people. Okay? Just wanted to go have that straightened out.
Mocking the idea that you constantly need prior authorization from your health insurance company before you essentially do anything if you expect to coverage. The second commenter said, quote, sending prior authorization denied claims, collections, and prayers to his family. The third commenter said, was his trip to the ER really an emergency? According to his own company, my husband's heart attack wasn't actually an emergency, and we were out $3,000, the full deductible. So a personal grievance against his company, where presumably the woman's husband had an emergency, and somehow the health insurance company to whom they were paying premiums took the position that it wasn't covered as an emergency, and they ended up having to spend $3,000 on top of dealing with the stress, the obvious stress of dealing with a heart attack. Here's the fourth type of comment, the fourth user quote, it's crazy what my first thought was when I saw this news event, and then I look at all these comments and realized I'm not alone in my thoughts. And I think this is exactly the sort of thing that no matter where you look, you saw. Here's a user on Twitter, on X earlier today, whose reaction was United Healthcare CEO denied access to this life. Another user said to the person who just got the United Health CEO outside the Hilton Hotel, did you know there are other CEOs? The liberal commentator, the left liberal commentator, Ken Klippenstein, observing all of this, said, quote, weird how Americans have very strong feelings about health insurance executives. Wonder if there's a reason for that. And then here was CBS News reporting on an article, and I believe this was cited by Tim Pool as well, who is generally associated with the right and had a very similar reaction. When he heard about this, he posted an article that essentially was along these lines. United Health uses faulty AI to deny elderly patients medically necessary coverage, lawsuit claims. And the article, which was from 2023, said the following, quote, the lawsuit filed last Tuesday in federal court in Minnesota claims United Health illegally denied, quote, elderly patient care owed to them under Medicare Advantage plans by deploying an AI model known by the company to have a 90% error rate, overriding determinations made by the patient's physicians that the expenses were medically necessary. Quote, the elderly are prematurely kicked out of facilities nationwide or forced to deplete family savings to continue to receiving necessary medical care, all because United Health's AI model, quote, disagrees with their real live doctors' determinations, according to the complaint.
Yes. And about that AI that denies coverage, the AI app that denies coverage. There are people that sit there and they'll defend that shit and be like, who we defend to criticize the free market? Ain't no BS. You know, no. And here's the thing. Think about it. The status quo of the healthcare system. If you are a capitalist, even if you believe in capitalism, it is bad for the free market system to have what we have here. It is bad for it. It denies on the broader economy non-exploitative economic growth. Imagine if we had a single-payer healthcare system or a national health service. Imagine, just see the economic growth. And for the right who are begging for a capital gains tax cut, it is a disguised capital gains tax cut waiting to happen. That's how you can have a capital gains tax cut, through universal health care. But they don't see this. They don't see this. The manufacturing base would come back into this country. We had the system. Strangely enough, for those people that want to sit there and see people pull themselves up on their bootstraps, those people, the people who rail against the welfare system, you will have fewer people on the welfare rolls if we had universal health care, a single payer system, a national health service, because, you won't have this means testing system where you have to choose between working and not getting the health coverage you and your family need versus not working, so you'll be able to get some kind of a public assistance. Most people want to work. And so, here's the thing. That would be, for those who are obsessed with welfare reform, that would be welfare reform. But that's not the kind of welfare reform that the right wants. They want to go and just take shit away from people. And that's not how you do this. You do it by the welfare reforms, by making it so where it is prosperous, more prosperous to work than it is to not work. And that's how you do it. But the right don't see it that way. The right just wants people to be a slave to their corporate masters and all of that. And you know, that's what they want at the end of the day. So, and here's the thing. Private health insurance is one of the most harmful things. It's one of the most harmful leeches to the American economy here. And you're just going to see this country go to shit as long as private health insurance companies exist. Yes, I do not support what this assailant did last week as far as that drastic action. But I am more opposed to what private health insurance companies do to their clients. Because they have done far more evil and far more damage to people and far more violence than this Luigi Minovi person whose name I cannot pronounce. And that's where I stand. I guess with the announcement, a lot of good things have been said about Cuba. See, United States sends bombs to other countries. Cuba sends a team of doctors to other countries. It's a big difference. But we got to act like Cuba's the scary, scary country. You know. Thank you, Warren. Let me see if I Luigi Manigon. Luigi Manigon. There you go. Luigi Manigon. I now can pronounce it better. So anyway, tomorrow night, 7:00, we'll have Bragglands. And hopefully we'll have some more guests coming on the show too. The Willy Bragg show. I should be back as well at 8:00 Wednesday and 8:00 Friday. And what else am I going to say? Anything else going on? I can't think of anything else at the moment. Other than, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment anyway if you disagree with what I have to say. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time. And remember to reject corporate media. Free and pardon Julian Assange. Julian Assange is already free. Pardon Julian Assange. Free and pardon Ed Snowden. Free Palestine. Free healthcare for all. Yes, please. And allow free speech to make its triumphant comeback to the United States. Take care, folks. I will talk to you all later. See ya. Bye-bye.